Hey everyone, welcome to Fullstack, where we build real-world web apps the right way. Today, we'll implement create, read, update, and delete with Firebase in Next.js 15. Let's get started. First, let's open up VS Code. I have already created a directory for the project. Next, let's open a terminal and write npx create next app at latest space dot. This is going to initialize our Next.js app. We are going to go with the defaults here and just hit enter all the way through. Once our project has initialized, we can go to the app directory and see that our files are here. Next, the first thing that we're going to do is go in the page.tsx file and remove everything within the first div. Let's also delete this image import. And now let's run our development server using npm run dev. Let's add a header for our project. I am also going to add a bit of margin to the bottom. And then let's go ahead and create an unordered list with a few list items. This is going to be our list in the future. For now though, let's just put some more data into it. A few numbers should be fine. Let's go ahead and create an input element of type text. And let's also give it a class name of border. Let's also fix our container over here because the default Next.js is a bit chunky. Let's add flex call, and a little gap. We can also add max width of 3XL. Let's also make sure we center our content by using margin auto. We should put our input in a div because we also need to add a button. I'm going to give this div the same flex class name. Next, let's add the button, and I just type add for now. Let's give the button a class name of border. Padding 2. And let's give the container a gap of 2 as well. Next, let's go on the input and give it some padding as well. Now we can type inside our input, and when we click add, we should be adding the text to the list below it. This is going to be done using Firebase, more specifically Firestore. First, let's go to console.firebase.google.com and let's add a new project. Let's add the name. I'm going to use Fullstack CRUD tutorial. And then let's disable for now Gemini and Google Analytics and hit create project. Once our project has finished, we can hit continue. Let's go ahead and add an app to our project. We can click the web button and then under register my app, let's put a name. I'm gonna call it Fullstack-CRUD. Let's hit continue. And now we need to add the Firebase SDK to our project. First, we need to copy the command, create a new terminal window, and let's run npm install Firebase. Now, let's go ahead and copy the config code. We can go back to our project, click on package.json, create a new folder, let's call it Firebase. Now, inside this folder, let's create a new file called firebase.config.ts. Let's paste our code here, remove some of the comments, we don't need them. This is our Firebase config. You should always use environment variables to store your API keys in order for them to not get stolen. Let's also create a new constant called db, and let's use get Firestore, and let's call the app. For some reason, I cannot auto-import this, so I'm going to import it manually. Import get Firestore from Firebase Firestore. And lastly, let's export our DB so we can use it in other files. Let's hit continue to console. Now we are going to go under build and Firestore database. Here we need to create our first database. On the top you can see create database. Let's hit that. Choose your location. I'm going to choose Europe because it's closer to me. Let's hit next. And now let's select start in test mode. Hit create. There it is. This is our first cloud Firestore. Congratulations. Let's go back to VS Code. And let's make this component a client component. Note that you should not use the use client directive in page.tsx. You should create the child component and use it there. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to demonstrate on this component. Let's also give a placeholder to our input. And let's create the use state for the value. Set the value to the state. And now let's make sure that whenever we update our input, we update our state as well. Let's also add an on-click event for our button here. And for now, let's just console log our input state. Let's go ahead and try it out. If we open the console, delete any errors from before. Now when we hit add, you can see that the state is blank, but if we type anything inside it, when we hit add, we will have this state. Now what we want to do is to actually save this value inside our database. Let's go back to our VS Code editor, and let's also import add.doc from Firestore. Using add.doc, we will be able to write documents inside our database. Let's also import collection. And let's change this whole function to handle add item. Let's create a function. Let's make it asynchronous. We are going to use a wait since this is an async function. We are going to use the add_doc function from Firestore. But first, we need to pass in a collection. The collection takes two parameters. The first one is the database that we are exporting from our Firestore config file. And the next is the actual collection that we want to add an item to. The second parameter for the add_doc function is what we need to write inside our database, which is our input text state that holds our value. Let's go back to our browser now, refresh, and let's try it out. I'm going to write a new item. Let's say hello world. When I click add, you'll see that nothing happens. But in reality, if we go to the Firebase Console and hit refresh, you will see that we have a new collection called items, and inside this collection, we have a new document with the input text of hello world. You might be wondering, why do we not see the data yet? Well, that's because we haven't implemented the functionality yet. Let's try again. Let's write Fullstack is awesome. Let's hit add. If we go back to the Firestore console, you will see another document just got added. So now that we are sure this is working fine, let's go ahead and implement the next feature. But before that, you might have noticed that if we write something inside the input and we hit add, the input stays the same. It doesn't revert back to an empty string. So let's go ahead and change that. Let's set the input text back to an empty string whenever we add a document. Let's test it out. And now you can see the input gets cleared whenever we hit the add button. Moving forward, we want to actually fetch the data from the database instead of just displaying a bunch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s. We actually want the data that we write to be inside our list. So let's go ahead and import useEffect. Let's create a new items state. And let's go ahead and create a functionality in order to fetch our data. You might think that our items coming from the database are going to be something like this, an array of strings. Let's go ahead and create a map for this. So instead of these list items, we are going to use the items to map over our array. So let's go ahead and say items.map. And for each item, we are going to return a list item with the actual item inside it. But in reality, we don't get the data from the database as strings. We get them as an array of objects, like so. Input text, and then a string, and so on. So let's go ahead and modify this value here. You can also see an error from Next.js saying we need a key prop. So let's go ahead and add that. So now that our errors are gone, let's go ahead and actually fetch the data. Let's create a new useEffect here, and we're gonna pass an empty array. This means that it only runs one time. Let's now create the function that we'll actually call in order to load the data. Fetch items is a amazing function. Now let's say const snapshot is await get docs, which we're going to import from Firestore. And then we need to pass collection, which is going to be as before, db and items. Make sure you pass items as a string. And then let's go ahead and set the items to our snapshot.docs.map. So now for each document that we get, we are going to return an object with a key of ID, that is doc.id. And then we need our input text, which is going to be a bit different. It's going to be the doc.data.input text. We always need to use this data for accessing the keys from our database. So now let's make sure we fetch our items right here in the use effect. Let's go back to our app. Now let's refresh the page. As you can see, after a few milliseconds, we get the data from our database. Congratulations! Let's go ahead and add another item. We did it. Why don't we see the new item? We only see the 4 that were previously here. Even though in our Firebase console, we have the new item. We did it. This is because, going back to our code, we also need to fetch the items whenever we add a new item. So after adding an item, we need to call fetch items again. Now let's go back, refresh. And now if you write something else and hit add, you're going to see that our list gets instantly updated. Awesome. Now over here on the bottom, let's go ahead and create a new button. Let's name it delete. Let's give it a class name, just to style it a bit. Let's give it a padding of 2, a border, a BG of red, 500, and let's give it some text white. Let's see how this looks. Okay, let's actually add the cursor pointer here. Awesome. Great. Let's go ahead and also add an on click for our button. Let's just call it handle delete. Let's also pass the item.id. We are going to need that in order to know what item we need to delete from our database. Over here, I see some TypeScript errors. Let's just make sure to delete this in order to be an empty string. And there are some TypeScript errors here as well. Let's just put any for now. We don't want to do anything about TypeScript. This is a pretty much straightforward tutorial. All right, now let's create the handle delete function. So handle delete should be an async function. We are going to get an ID. And if we have an ID, we should return instantly. Moving forward, let's await the delete doc. And let's pass in the first prop, which is what document we want to delete. So in our collection, we are going to the DB. And then to items, just as above. And to our ID. Actually, this should be document instead of collection. And let's import that from Firestore. Okay, this looks good. And let's also fetch the items once we delete. Actually, I can see that we have a little error here. It should be a string of items. Okay, let's go ahead and test it out. Awesome, this is working perfectly. Moving on, let's go ahead and also create the edit button. So I'm just gonna copy this delete button for now. Let's see where it ends, right here. Let's just duplicate this button. And let's change the text to edit. Let's change the color. Let's make it on yellow. And let's also change the function name to handle edit. Let's go ahead and create a functionality handle edit. It's going to be the same as delete, an async function that is getting an ID. We are going to prompt for an edit value for now. So let's go const edit value equals prompt. Let's just pass a message. Enter the new value. And then once we have this edit value, actually, if we don't have it, we should return. And if we do have it, all we need to do is await update doc. Same thing as above, we're going to use the doc. And it should be db items. Let's make sure we don't forget to put a string there. And then the ID. And then what we need to update is the actual text, which is input text. And let's change that to the edit value. And also, let's not forget to actually fetch the items again. Okay, let's try it out. Flashback tutorials. Let's see. Awesome. So this is working as well. And now you have learned all the 4 principles of database, which are create, read, update, and delete. Let's add a bit of styling, and this is the final product. Thank you for watching, guys. If you like the content, make sure to also subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. See you later.